Hello students, this is Dr. D and today we are going to go over the endocrine slide pictures. This is required for lab unit exam 2. Now once again you understand that when you're studying for lab, you're also studying for what? What have we said that? You're also studying for lecture. So alright, let's go on to the next slide. The first slide is that of the pituitary gland. And of course, you should know that the pituitary is made up of two lobes, the anterior lobe and the posterior lobe. Now, if I put an arrow out here and ask you to identify the gland, then you say adenohypophysis. If I put the pointer here, you should know that I'm asking about the what? The neurohypophysis. All right. So here, let's go on to the next slide. So again, this is a better picture with a higher magnification. And same here. Now, how do you know that this is the pituitary? Simply because you see the distinctness of here, the anterior lobe has what? Distinct and definite cells, right? And then the posterior lobe just has what? It has the nerve fibers. Do you see any distinct cells? No. And we already know from our lecture exam, right? So now let's go on to the third slide. Now, of course, for any of the lab exam, you should know the hormones too. Yeah, we already know that, right? And what else do we need to know? We need to know also the control. For each and every hormone, the control, the positive and the negative, the positive and the negative. So say for example, we are looking at the growth hormone. So for the growth hormone, what is the positive and the negative? So the growth hormone is stimulated by what? GHRH. So if I say, for example, let's see if my pen works, okay? So here, it's not working. All right, so here, if I, let me see if, no. So here, if I ask for the growth hormone and I'll ask you, okay, which is the hormone that stimulates, which is produced by the hypothalamus, you will say growth hormone releasing hormone. No acronym is allowed. Which one that inhibits, then you'll say somatostatin. All right. Now here, let's look at the next hormone. Oh, before we go on, I wanted to also tell you not only is the identification of the gland, but also the hormones, the functions, and what? Diseases. All right. So here, let's look at the next gland, and that is the thyroid. So how do you recognize the thyroid gland? Simple. If you see these structures, which are nothing but follicles, that's how you recognize a thyroid gland. So whether it's a low magnification or a higher magnification, you should see follicles. Now, three things that you need to identify. Here, this is the colloid. Of course, I'll never ask you for the colloid. But definitely I'll ask you, what are these? Identify the cell. So what will you say? Follicular cell that line the colloid or the colloid of the follicles. So this structure is the what? Follicle. These cells are the follicular cells. What is the function of the follicular cells? The function of the follicular cells is to produce the hormone T3, T4. All right, let's keep it simple. Now here are the extrafollicular cells, also called the parafollicular cells. What do they produce? They produce the third hormone, that's a calcitonin. Once again, follicular cells produce what? T3, T4. Parafollicular or extrafollicular produce what? The calcitonin. All right. Now you also have to know the control. So TRH is the one which is the thyrotropin releasing hormone, is the one that is going to stimulate the anterior pituitary to produce the what? TSH. That's the thyroid stimulating hormone that will stimulate the thyroid to produce the T3, T4 and the calcitonin. All right. And how is it inhibited? It is inhibited because of the level of the T3, T4, which will inhibit both TSH and TRH. You have to know this. All right, thyroid disorders. Again, this is just a repetition of your lecture exam. So nothing nothing so important. Like I said, when you're studying for lab, you're studying for also lecture. Parathyroid. How do I know this is parathyroid? Very simple. As soon as you see follicles, but do you see follicles here? Answer is no. So you are seeing a dense cell structure. I have a better slide in the next picture. So you are seeing a dense structure next to follicles. Then what is that? That's the parathyroid. This is the parathyroid, and once again this is the thyroid. So if the arrow is pointing here, parathyroid. If the arrow is pointing here, this is the thyroid gland. But if I ask you identify the cell, then what will you say? Follicular cell. If the pointer is here, I'll say identify the cell. What will you say? You'll say parafollicular cell or extrafollicular cell. All right. Here is another picture, same thing. Here is the parathyroid, and you can see that this is the thyroid gland. Why? Because here are the follicles which are lined by the follicular cells. These are the follicular cells. And if I were to point at parafollicular cells, this is the parafollicular cell or extrafollicular cell. You see, same thing. Again, don't forget, you need to know the hormone produced by the parathyroid gland. All right. And of course, if there are any disorders related to parathyroid gland secretion. Next, thymus. How do I recognize the thymus? You see a tornado-like structure, and this structure is called the Hassel corpuscle. So two questions I can ask you. Identify the gland. What will you say? Thymus. Both of the times the point is pointing to here just to attract your attention. All right. So identify the gland. You'll say thymus. Identify the structure. You'll say Hassel corpuscle. So this structure, the Hassel corpuscle, is basically an aggregation of granular cells. What is the exact function of Hassel corpuscle? We still don't know this, but we definitely know that it produces a chemical messenger called the cytokine. And you studied cytokine in Unit 1, Chapter 1, yes, in blood. All right. So then let's look at another better picture of thymus gland, and you see this tornado-like structure. This is the Hassel corpuscle. All right. So, all right, let's look at the next, the pineal gland. Now, the pineal gland, remember, it's in the brain. So what do you see? You see mostly fiber-like structures, which are nothing but what? These are the axon fibers, right? But here, what do you see? You see these structures, which are not cells, by the way, but these are bicarbonate crystals. So whenever you see these crystals or these stone-like, which are actually falsely called stones of the brain, this organ, this gland is the pineal gland. Let me go back to thymus because I forgot to tell you. If I remember, for every gland, you have to know the secretion. All right. So you already know what secretion is produced by or what is the hormone that is produced by the thymus and its function. All right. So pineal gland, also you know the secretion, melatonin, what's its function. Okay. Let's look at the next gland, adrenal gland. And what are we looking at? This layer. So how do I recognize adrenal? Because you're seeing cord-like structures. Do you see this string of cells? These cord-like structures, it is an adrenal gland. Now, how do I know which layer of the adrenal gland? Of course, we're looking at the cortex. So remember, the cortex is the outside, medulla is the inside, right? So here the outermost layer is what? Glomerulosa. Then is what? Fasciculata. Then is what? Reticularis. So this layer is the second layer of the cortex, which is the zona fasciculata. So like in every other, okay, here is a better picture. So here it's more magnified, so you can clearly see rows, columns of cells, and you recognize these strings or columns or cords is adrenal gland. And like I said, which layer, which zone? So of course this is the second layer of the adrenal cortex. And of course, what is it? So the outermost of the glomerulosa, this is the fasciculata. Like everything else, you have to know all the layers and their secretion. Don't forget which hormone is produced. All right. Now, control of adrenal gland, you have to know the control. And no acronym is going to be allowed, right? So if I put say for example hypothalamus, and I put the anterior pituitary, and I say, okay, there's a positive mark, and I'll say fill in the blank. So then what happens is, so you have to know it is the CRH. No acronym is allowed. The anterior pituitary produces which hormone that will stimulate the adrenal gland? Of course, it is the adrenocorticotropic hormone, right? And this is the corticotropin releasing hormone. We know this, yes? So again, you have to know the control. And like I said, this is just a repeat. The diseases, make sure you're looking at the diseases, and you are coming, you are taking this information from what? From your lecture notes. All right. All right, then let's go on to the next gland, that's the pancreas. And how do I recognize the pancreas? Now look carefully. Do you see a group of cells which has a different, they're loosely arranged and different stain? Do you see the stain difference? All right, so this is the islet of Langerhans. This is the endocrine portion of the pancreas. Okay, so pancreas gland is both exocrine and endocrine. What do you mean by exocrine? Exocrine means that it has ducts. All the secretion from the exocrine, which are mostly the enzymes and the mucus and the bicarbonate, is taken to is carried with the help of ducts or pipe. Now the endocrine produces hormone, and it releases the secretions to the blood directly, not to any duct or pipe. So this group of cells is called the islet of Langerhans, and therefore this is how you recognize the pancreas gland. All right, I have a better picture, and you can clearly see the cell difference in the stain. Do you see the stain difference? So 2 questions for this slide. Identify the gland. What will you say? Pancreas. Identify the structure. You will say islet of Langerhans. You understand? Now, of course, islet of Langerhans, when you're talking about a gland, you also need to know the hormones. All right. So what are the hormones? So you've already studied this. There are 3 cells: alpha cells, the beta cells, and the delta cells. You have to know the secretion of each: glucagon, alpha cells; insulin, beta cells; and the somatostatin is produced by the delta cells, and their functions. So again, overlap, right? And their functions. And last but not the least, of course, you also have to know the disease caused because of the disorders, because of the hormone secreted. Either it is secreted very little, especially we're talking about the insulin, if there is low secretion. So what is the disease related? And that's the diabetes mellitus. Remember, there are 2 types of diabetes, and both have a different cause. All right, so symptoms will be the same. So all right, with this we come to the end of our presentation. If there are questions or concerns, then please reach out to me. And once again, I thank you for being patient and listening to me. Thank you. Have a good day.